Chief Innovation Officer at his own startup SenseForth AI Research. We are very much lucky today who is joining us. Today, the topic is Madhvacharya's approach towards society. I heartily welcome him. Please start.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Srimadananda Tirtha Bhagavat Padacharya Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Narasimho Akhilajnana Matadbhanta Divakaraha Jayat Yamita Sajnana Sukashikti Payonidhi Swantasthananta Shayyaya Purnajnana Radharanase Uttunga Vaktarangaya Madhvatugdabdhaye Namaha Lasatu Srimadananda Tirthendurno Hridambare Yadvachas Chandrika Swanta Santapam Mekrantati. My topic is I want to cover a few points about Srimad Ananda Tirtha Bhagavat Padacharya's perspective on family and society. So let me basically to start with, according to our Acharya, our master, our hero of today, the purpose of creation is to provide a ground for eligible souls to perform their sadhana. That is the purpose of this creation. The infinitely blissful, independent, flawless Vishnu has nothing to gain from this, not even entertainment. However, just like a man full of happiness dances, not because he has to gain from it, but because it is a natural expression, Vishnu also indulges in this creation as a natural expression of himself. That is his infinite bliss and infinite mercy for the eligible souls. This is the purpose of creation. Our purpose, the purpose of our individual lives, is tied or aligned to that purpose of creation itself. Basically, we need to use this life to make full use of the opportunity given. That is to perform sadhana, to enhance ourselves, to elevate ourselves, and make ourselves agreeable to our creator Vishnu. That is the purpose of this life. Now, what is the sadhana that we are supposed to do? It is basically acquiring jnana, bhakti, vairagya. That is the fundamental thing that is the main purpose of this life. How do these things happen? These happen through Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Shravana means basically studying scriptures under the Guru. And for an uninitiated person, that is the main program. That is the main thing that needs to be done in this life. Karma, acharana, anusthana, whatever we call that, is secondary, but it has twofold purpose. One, it is to increase the punya, decrease the papa, that will eventually remove the obstacles for acquiring knowledge. And more importantly, the second purpose is to cleanse our own consciousness, which is basically to do chitta shuddhi. That will enable pure knowledge to stay in whenever we acquire that. This karma also should be done, whatever has been enjoined upon us in a nishkama way, and it should be done with no other desire but to, when you say nishkama, it doesn't mean totally desireless. It means having no other desire other than pleasing Vishnu. That's the most important thing. See, all our injunctions, right? Do this, don't do this, are meant to help us please Vishnu. Whether people say that it is punya, papa, I want to feel happy and all that stuff. That's all secondary. Primary thing is his pleasure. Not that his bliss will increase or decrease, just that he will be more favorably disposed towards us. So all vidhi nishedha, all injunctions, prohibitions should be observed only because they would please Vishnu. So that needs to be understood. Otherwise, all these things, or whatever vidhi nishedha we say, and whatever I am going to say in this lecture will not be appreciated. If once it is understood that Vishnu's pleasure is what our Vishnu Preeti is the main goal, then we will leave things like political correctness and things like that. We'll only worry about trying to understand what will gain us Vishnu Preeti. Now, there are many other forums or articles or books that can help us tell us about, what is more on this individual sadhana. My purpose here is to focus on two structures that an individual associates with, which is family and society. So I would like to narrate Acharya's perspective on these two things. There is a lot available in our Dharma Shastra, but my focus here will be purely on what Acharya says. Now, of course, the problem is that his works are filled with Shruti Smriti, and his words are fewer in content per se, right? His own words to say it. But I mean that is as per the Lord Narayana's instruction, which is Shruti Smriti Kave Yojaya. So his works are filled with Shruti and Smriti, and his own words, so to speak, are fewer in number. But for our purpose, we treat his quotations from these different places as his own, only because he has quoted them as having has indicative of his own perspective. That is, it is Anumodaka. He has quoted them approvingly, so therefore we treat them as his words. And in this session, I will limit myself to presenting few insights from Acharya. Again, only on some tough or some not so easy situations in family and the society thing. So for our discussion, we will consider the conventional idea of family, which has parents, husband, wife, children, grandchildren, etc. Now I will present these thoughts one by one. Basically, my focus is to show some interesting insights that Acharya presents in his works, primarily from Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, Bhagavata Tatparya Nirnaya, and a few other works. So we will start with the episodes or the instances that I will narrate will be a little random, but essentially they are around how people, different roles in the family should be conducting themselves. So start with which is very well known in our philosophy, Matrudevo Bhava, Pitrudevo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava is very well known. So those are again interpreted as for when it is basically seeks the it enjoins the seeker to say that you should consider Deva as being present in your Matru. That is the actual meaning of that. Now, while describing, this is actually demonstrated later. So in different what do you call avatars and all that. So one such avatara is basically Yashoda and Krishna. Yashoda tries she attempts to tie Krishna using many ropes and things like that. First, he doesn't get into her. He is not to be bound, because he demonstrated that Abandha Yogyatam Prabhu Pradarshya Leelaya. How many ever ropes she brings in, she is not able to bind him. However, he then demonstrates. See, this is important. So the Acharya gives this kind of dictum all over his works. Okay, Sutasya Matru Vashyatam Pradarsya Dharmam Ishvaraha. It is indeed dharma that a son should be under the mother's command or control. To demonstrate that, what did the Lord do? He allowed himself to be tied by his so-called mother. Now, we must also recollect that Acharya himself, right? Sriman Madhacharya, Anandatirtha Bhagavat Padacharya, our master, he demonstrated this Matruvashyata himself. His parents, disapproved his wish initially to take sannyasa. Okay, he negotiates, reasons it with them. Then he understands the reasons for their disapproval, and basically, they would want another progeny who would do the the death rites after they die. So he decides to wait till his parents had another son. You see, just in this instance, our Acharya has shown respect-worthy character. He dealt with the conflict of interest fair and square. He did not play any tricks with his mother, creating some fake situation like crocodile or anything like that. He dealt it fair and square and resolved the situation. In fact, if you look at how Acharya depicts different people in the Mahabharata Tatparya or Bhagavata Tatparya, one thing is clear. See, conflicts arise everywhere, but they deal with it not by playing games or playing tricks with one's beloved. Only adharmic people, yeah, you can have a little twisted treatment there. But your well-wishers, your parents, your other family members, they are dealt fair and square. So this instance I would like to look at as, depicting how a child or a son should be with his parents, and also when there is conflict of interest. Now, another one is that of, this is, I think, one of my favorites, where, the different roles of different family members are highlighted. So after the Pandavas escaped from the Lakshagraha, the wax palace, they disguise themselves as Brahmanas and they stay put at a Vipra's house, a Brahmana's house. Then few days later, the Vipra's family is in turmoil because of Bakasura. So there, each mention why they are not important, and why they can be sacrificed. So this is described very well by our Acharya. So Bhimasena sends his mother to find out the reason for the turmoil. He doesn't go by himself because it's just a house with lady and children. So a sudden appearance from they may be feeding the children or whatever it is, and sudden appearance from a man would make them uncomfortable. So he sends his mother. But I mean, this is where, by the way, in the corresponding portion of Mahabharata, the famous verse "Tyajedekam kulasyarthe" appears there. So basically, you can sacrifice one for the sake of family and all this if a need arises. So then the Acharya describes, how different, the daughter will give her reasons, mother will give her reasons, but the husband, the man in the house, rejects all of them. So this, I believe, is important to know how Shastras view these roles as dharmic roles. So the daughter, for example, puts herself up for sacrifice. She says, Kanya is of no use to the family. Okay, but her father rebukes her by saying, Kanyojitabala kuladvayatarini. A daughter is a savior or an enabler of two clans. It is not, a guy can basically, if a man does dharmic works, if he does sadhana and if he becomes a good guy, he will enhance his own clan. On the other hand, a daughter, if she does the same thing, she will basically improve two clans. So therefore, you cannot say that a Kanya is of no use. Kanya is of great use. That's what the head of the house says. The wife, before that, actually, the wife also says that she can be sacrificed on the grounds that she will win lokas if her husband is which are meant for sati and all those things. The husband rejects that by saying she cannot be sacrificed because a wife is like a friend. The Vipra says that all this is in the Veda. Okay, so the reference is basically Sakhaha Jaya is the Aitareya Brahmana Vakya. The line is from Aitareya Brahmana. It is before Harishchandra basically is asked to do something about getting Rohitashva. Before it appears there. So there the different the different roles are mentioned, and there it came Sakhaha Jaya. A wife is like a friend. In fact, there in Aitareya Upanishad Bhashya, Srimad Acharya quotes Harivamsha's Dhanyashcharya Adhyaya. In that Adhyaya, Vishnu states, look, Lakshmi is my friend. Mitram me Dakshina Rama. The Supreme Lord, who is absolutely independent, treats his spouse like a friend. Then what should we do who are mutually dependent on our spouses? So, I mean, basically, the attitude that is depicted towards wife in the Veda is that she's a friend. So you need to treat her like that and not like a slave or anything like that. The same Aitareya Brahmana Vakya continues to say, Krupanamha Dvita. Basically, it declares that the daughter is a Krupana. But Krupana has a negative connotation in regular Sanskrit. It means pitiable or miserable, basically. But what without making it too obvious, Srimad Acharya has corrected that possible misinterpretation by saying that a daughter carries two clans with her. Based on that, Sri Vadiraja explains Kripana as Kripa Patra, as an abode of benevolence. And that's how even that line in the Aitareya Brahmana means that a daughter is an abode of benevolence. So I mean, I wonder at times, will there be, if people knew this thing, right? If this interpretation, will there be social evils like female infanticide and things like that in our country? Anyway, moving on. The son is also important. The son cannot be sacrificed, says the Shruti, because again the same Shruti says, Atma vai putra namasi. This comes in Aitareya Aranyaka. Basically, it is like your own self who is reborn. In fact, Jaya is because, I am, the person is reborn, Jayate punaha iti Jaya. So he's reborn from his wife as his own son. That is why she is called Jaya. Now, so that's how the paragraph, that entire thing lays the importance of different roles and how each of them are not independent or not, pointless or useless. And we should keep this in mind, when we're dealing with our own family. There is also a bit of confusion around the necessity of sons, right? For example, the same Aitareya Brahmana Vakya continues to say, there is no loka, that is heaven, for one without a putra. Na putrasya lokosti. There are similar words in Garuda Purana. Aputrasya gatirnasti, swargo naivacha naivacha. Yena kena pipayena karyam janma sutasyahi. Tarayet narakat putro yadimukshona vidyate. But Acharya corrects this thing also. He says, anapatyopi saddharma lokajan atra samshaya. Basically, if that person has indulged in basically saddharma, in proper dharmas, even if he doesn't have progeny, he will still get to heavens. So this, he tells this in the context of, Devatas not accepting Angaraja's Havis. Because he does not have progeny. They will not come, and Angaraja will ask the priests around as to why the Devatas did not come to accept his ablutions, and they will tell that it's because you do not have a son. I mean, it's another thing that, he would have committed some sort of Bala Hatya, which is, in some previous Janma, because of which it leads to his childlessness right now. And even when he gets a child due to others, it will be an evil son, which is the Vena. But the Devatas did not do it because, Acharya says this. Okay, the Devata does not do it because he did not have son. They wanted it to eventually lead to Prithu's birth. Prithu is, Vishnu Avesha. He is one of the highest kings out here, and they wanted that to happen. Because of that, they told a reason saying that aputrasya gatir nasti kind of thing. But Acharya corrects that thing, saying that the problem is not really about not being sonless, but it is because he they wanted Prithu to be born then. Now, in fact, in Mahabharata Tatparya also, Acharya gives the example of Dharmangada to reject the need to depend on sons to get Sadgati. One's own Satkarmas are enough, actually. And anyway, even if you have all sons in the place, if you do not have eligibility, you are not going to get any moksha or anything like that. Acharya clarifies this point also in Bhagavata Tatparya. Now, thirdly, I want to look at some other observations, Acharya's insights on how to deal with conflicting situations. What if your elders, right, advise or force you to take up or do some adharma? So there are two situations that are described in the Mahabharata Tatparya, and they give us an insight on how to deal with them. So one situation is, Dhritarashtra commands Yudhishthira to go to Varanavaka, which is basically the wax palace is there. So the whole plot is set up to kill them. Dhritarashtra doesn't know that, but Duryodhana insists that they go there. Bhima realizes this, and he says that this can potentially lead to begging around, which is a loss of Kshatriya Dharma. So he tells Yudhishthira the same and suggests that they should confront Dhritarashtra about it. But his elder brother says, no, our glories will be tarnished, if we have conflict with elders, which is a good thing. So he says that let's accept our Pitruviya's words. So Bhima too withdraws after that. So see Acharya's word there. Dosho bhaved ubhayatho yatayeva tena vachya swadharma utana sthitiratra karya. So not talking about potential dharma is also a flaw. Potential adharma is also a flaw. But again, so is Sabban's persistence against elders' voice. So please remember, this is one situation. Let's go to the other one. After they escape from the Lakshagraha, Pandavas reach a forest. while others are taking rest, Bhima keeps a watch on them. So Hidimbi approaches him for marriage, but Bhima refuses on the ground that it is adharma to marry when his elder brother is still unmarried. Later, Hidimba comes over there and gets killed by Bhima. Kunti and others wake up and they get to know about the Bhima and Hidimbi conversation. They give them approval for their marriage, but Bhima still refuses. Only when Sri Vedavyasa gives his approval, Bhima accepts the marriage. So these are two different situations. In the first situation, you have potential loss of dharma, but Bhima did not persist because elders' approval was sufficient. In the second situation, Bhima did not relent even after the same elders' approval, because the transgression would have been much more. For that, he needed the approval of the Supreme Lord himself. So he shows us what to do in case of conflict. Depending on the level of transgression, you need to agree or not agree. So, for example, if our elders ask us not to observe Ekadashi or not to study Madhva Shastra, we should not listen to that. There is another important point that is revealed in the second situation where Sri Vedavyasa comes there, right? So most of the current morals and ethics discussion, or even when an atheist like I forget his name, when they talk about even atheists having moral and all that, we assume that there is some sort of universal compass or universal yardstick for measuring dharma and adharma. But that's not the case. For our Siddhanta, the Veda and the allied literature is the universal yardstick. Okay, there is no moral compass beyond that. Other than that. If Veda pranihito dharma, yadharmas tad viparyaya. This is the generic thing there. And this is also secondary, by the way. This is true because the Veda is the command of Srihari. The primary yardstick is Lord himself. There is generally, more often than not, there is no variance between what the Lord says and the Shruti Smriti. But there are times when he can give a special approval and it rules over the general dictum. So when he gives the approval, that becomes the dharma itself. So in this case, he told Hidimbi, you can marry Bhima, or Bhima, you can marry Hidimbi, then that becomes dharma, no questions asked. There is no moral compass, elder brother, that doesn't work then. His word rules the roost. Okay, coming back to conflicts, another important episode is that of Dyuta Sabha, right? Bhima opposes Yudhishthira in no easy terms. He goes to the extent of saying, your shoulders could be broken and all those things. Arjuna is shocked by that utterance. But Bhima tells, look, such things should be told, but not actually executed. Vaktavyam nadu kartavyam tasman nahi maya kritam. Later, when Duryodhana tries to seize this opportunity and see if there is any conflict between them, he asks Bhima, if he or Arjuna is the decision maker. Bhima says nothing doing. He upholds the Pandava unity by saying, they all are still bound by Yudhishthira. Pujyo asmakam dharmajo asamshayena. This again points out to how brothers should conduct themselves when in conflict. Harsh words are fine, but no harsh or antagonistic acts. The opposite of this can be seen in a different situation, which is that of Vali-Sugriva conflict. Ramachandra does not kill Vali in the first instance. People say I couldn't distinguish and all those things. That is just to, mislead the people who can't think through to it. So he sees that it is not dharma to kill Vali immediately without giving a chance to Sugriva to figure out how he will feel in case of actual death. So there Acharya says, any angst between between brothers will not last long, at least in most cases, in general, right? So Rama wanted to give that chance to Sugriva, but Sugriva insists on getting Vali killed, and this also doesn't turn too well to Sugriva himself. It eventually leads to him siding with the Kauravas or Karna. So the entire thing so far has been, between brothers, conflicts can arise. Depending on the situation, the younger ones can listen. Sometimes they can protest. And in case of extreme thing, Bhimasena shows that he even goes to telling Yudhishthira that he's wrong. And he said, your shoulder should be burned. but he told, he did not, what do you call, execute that. In fact, there is a very beautiful passage out there. He tells how punishment should be meted out to different types of people. I mean, this applies even not just for a family, but to the entire society itself. He says, Vaktavyam natu kartavyam is a case for, a uttama, a person who is quite dharmic, who is quite virtuous. They make some mistakes once in a while, so they should be told. They should be, you can scold them, but you don't need to do anything more than that. There is no other punishment rather than, scolding them. Madhyama, on the other hand, you need to, vitta harana is possible. Basically, you need to take away something from them. So it can be, some sort of money or whatever it is, but they need to see a physical loss there. The third one, danda, is basically, the adhama, people like Duryodhana, they will not relent. And they need to be meted out only physical treatment. So in our society today, our problem is that we see everybody in the same lens. So that's where, one issue could be there. Anyway, now let's go to another type of conflict, which is that of, woman, a conflict between a wife and a husband. Now, for the woman, Pati is the Adhishtana, where Hari should be worshipped. Ya Patim Haribhavena Bhajet, says Bhagavata. And just like, for the man, it is the Guru. So without any, whether they are equals or not equals, at least in our scriptures, the Pati is the Adhishtana Sthana for the lady. But what if there is a conflict between them? So we will see some instances on this, right? One instance is again between Draupadi and Yudhishthira on having a war after Vanvasa. Yudhishthira is little complacent. He's not too keen. He fears, conflicting with his elders like Bhishma. On the other hand, Bhima and Draupadi think that it is dharma. They hold it as dharma. There is a small philosophical debate there. Basically, Yudhishthira is unable to win over her. Instead, he scolds her. But what does she do? Srimad Acharya writes there, Shamapayamasa nripam yatastri. Okay. And then she forgives him, being a stri, who the king himself. And she also says that, Acharya writes that, Yatas vachalata natitaram hi shobhate strinam. And it doesn't befit women to keep, talking about the same thing, to keep nagging there. So she stops there. And then she handles it by letting Bhima continue that debate. So she gets her purpose served, but without nagging over there. Same thing you can see actually in case of Gargi and Yajnavalkya also. So she debates with her husband Yajnavalkya in an open sabha. This is there in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. She asks her husband about, who is the Adhar of everybody. He tells something, she doesn't continue questioning, but not because she is convinced, but she thinks that, why should, being a wife, she shouldn't ask about this thing. So she is like little afraid over there. But in the second time, he gives more reasoning. So then she withdraws because she is convinced logically about what Yajnavalkya is saying. So main point is that, they know how to handle the male ego. They did that thing. Okay. So everybody has their ego, and male ego is no different. But they handle it. But she, Draupadi especially, she figures out how to get Yudhishthira to agree to a war. So she urges Bhima to complete the discussion. There is another very important point. I mean, see, there are enough people who tell women what they need to do, and there are not enough who tell men what they need to do. So let me focus on that one here. There is another interesting incident. Krishna Bhagavan, right? He teases Rukmini sometime after their marriage that she was of no use to him. He carried her away just to undermine Shishupala and other enemies. I mean, so then the mother of the world, Rukmini, acts as if she's hurt at that, because she also had a dharma to demonstrate, which is that the lady should be apprehensive of displeasing the husband, just like, Devatas are afraid of displeasing the Lord. Then Krishna does, consoles her, he placates her and all that. But Acharya's words are interesting there. He says, Tam santvayamasa grahastha dharmam vijnapayam devadevaha. He basically says that the Lord consoled her or placated her, because it is grihastha's dharma to do that. So if there is a conflict, if there is then the rapprochement, who does the peace, the sandhi thing, it is the man's responsibility. And then we'll come to the other point. So this is about the wife and the husband. Then we'll talk about how what Acharya says about children. So while Eastern communities are the Indian, Asian communities are more given to corporal punishment to children at a younger age. The Western communities are more skeptical. You never know when that will become abuse. So Acharya gives a nice dictum to resolve this issue. He says this thing in his Mahabharata Tatparya. Okay, he says in general, I'll read out the full thing. Tattva Vijnapanam Dharmo Vipraschatu Visheshatah Sharira Danda Santyagah Putra Bharyadikan Rite Tatrapi Na Angahani Syatu Vedanava Chiram Natu. So basically he says that you should avoid corporal punishment, basically beating up children and all those things to the extent possible, and but not completely. If need be, you should do that also. But he qualifies as to what is admissible. He says, Tatrapi na angahani syat. There should not be any injury to any body part. There should not be any disfiguring disability that induced because of this punishment. And moreover, even the pain that is there should not last long. So you see, that is the measure he gives there. And of course, people are expected to be in their senses when they meet out this kind of issues. I just wanted to know how much time I have more. Hello?
Under 15 minutes you have time. No time restrictions.
Okay, very good, sir. Thank you. So then we will come to what Acharya's words on how a guru, what happens if a guru does not behave himself. This is trickier than anything else. So there he says, again in Gita Tatparya, he says, you should say, Unmade bandhanadyairva tadanam na guruh pachit papam charantastu anyepi sarvaihi drishtipatam gataha shaktito varanyasyuhu deshakalanu. Basically, he says, if the guru is misbehaving, okay, you should not beat him up. They say basically says that don't beat him up. But what you can do is to restrict him, tie him up, or it doesn't really mean tying up, but some sort of restriction you can place to ensure that he doesn't move around and things like that. So he covers all these situations and tells us how to deal with these different conflicts. So while all this love and all these things are fine, we should also remember that it's eventually these are all the roles that are meant to help us get Vishnu. If all these people are around us and we are behaving nicely with them, but we do not have focus on Vishnu, then it is all pointless. In fact, in some case, Acharya says in one of the works again, he says that Ramachandra's avatar was basically to show how a person who is excessively in love of his wife, what is the kind of fate that befalls them. He says it's Yatpada Pankaja Paraga Nishevakanam Dukkhani Sarvani Layam Prayanti Sabrahmavandya Charano Janamohanaya Stri Sanginam Iti Ratim Prathayam Stachara. So this basically the family should be one of the vehicles to go closer to Vishnu. That is the main idea. We will come to the other point, which is that of society. I must repeat what I told at the beginning, which is that all injunctions and vidhi and things like that should be done out of not out of fear towards God. I mean, God fearing is somewhat misleading, in fact, but out of love for pleasing God. And all prohibited acts must be avoided out of fear of disrespecting Him. Okay. Now with that, let's come to Acharya's words about the different people in society and how they should interact and things like that. So I mean, one question that used to make its appearance once in a while is is Acharya a social reformer? These days it's a little bit of fashion to think of people as, their masters as social reformers. But if you consider this question little deeply, it depends on what you consider as a reform. Most people, at least in today's world, they think that if a person revolts against something traditional, he will considered like social reformer. But that's a very narrow definition. I would think that, if a person is responsible for some real reformation, then he is a social reformer. And in that sense, Srimad Acharya is a social reformer because he gave a purpose to all classes of society. I must say that, there are underprivileged classes in our society. There have been many modern methods of affirmative action, like reservation or whatever it is. They may have given livelihood and opportunity to these people, right? But I am not sure if those have helped gain acceptance with the so-called privileged class. I also believe that, all this affirmative action does not address the main problem, which is that of human dignity. Basically, when we Shudra or whoever it is, the actual true problem is that there is no dignity for them. And that can be solved only by the approach that Acharya shows. So let me explain that thing. So consider this, the entire Varna system itself, right? While others have been, so some people say that, only male Brahmana sannyasis can get moksha, or, in the final this one. Or the other extreme is, some people say Varna system is not needed at all. Anybody can be given Upadesha and things like that. Acharya says that whatever he says, which I'm going to explain in the next few moments, it will make it obvious that Gita has been saying that all through. The Bhagavad Gita has been saying that all through. And what exactly is that? It is that the Varna system is there to assign a particular sadhana to a person. What does this mean? So basically, for a person born in the Brahmana Varna, his sadhana is in implementing the Shat Karma, which is Adhyayana, Adhyapana, Yajana, Yajana, which is to teach, to learn, to study, to perform sacrifices, so on and so forth. Kshatriya's main thing, if a person is born in Kshatriya Varna, he must protect Dharma. That is his mainstay. So doing whatever is enjoined on them results in good for them. Sve sve karmanya bhirataha samsiddhim labhate naraha. Acharya. So there is no loss of human dignity, just by division of labor. I mean, this is like, players in a football field, right? Different players are needed at different places, doing different things. If everybody does everything, just assume that the goalkeeper says, I want to play the attack. Will the team win? Same thing with our society too. Swakarmana tamabhyarcha. Tam is the Paramatma. Swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. So basically, you do your duty, and that is the means to get moksha. All this sounds good, but there are some verses in the scripture that bother us. We will see how Acharya deals with that. I mean, these are, this show that he is a Jagat Guru. Okay. So one such verse is, in the 9th Adhyaya of Bhagavad Gita, the Paramatma says, Maam hi partha vyapashritya yepi syuhu papayonayah striyo vaishyas tatha shudraha tepi yanti param gatim. Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarshayas tatha. So, and I mean, people have a cursory reading, makes one feel that a Stri, Vaishya or Shudra is of low birth or sinful birth. And in fact, some people have actually commented it that way. And the Lord is saying that even they will be, uplifted by him. But Acharya doesn't read it like that. I mean, that is like basically, sweeping an entire section of the society with saying that you all are of sinful birth. Ours is not like that. But Acharya interprets it differently. He says he brings in the idea of Swabhavika Varna. He doesn't bring in per se. I mean, he's not created it. It's there in our scripture if one reads it carefully. So the varna that is based on birth is Aupadhika varna. But the one that is innate to one's nature is Swabhavika varna. The former is determinant of the type of work one must do as part of sadhana. The later is just a vastusthiti, it's a description of people as they are. So if you are born out of a Brahmin couple, you are a Brahmana. That is Aupadhika varna. But if you have more Shama, Dhamma, which is, Shama means being absorbed in the Lord always. Dhamma means having the senses under control. Then if these virtues are more compared to other virtues in yourself, then you are a Swabhavika Brahmana. This is of course for the predominantly for the Manushyas. Devata is supposed to be of all varnas. So that shows, the importance of varna is limited only to determine determine the nature of work that you have to do as part of your sadhana. On the other, similarly, if among all other virtues, valor or standing up against adharma is predominant, such a person is a Swabhavika Kshatriya. So there are thus two different axes, one is a Swabhavika varna, another one is an Aupadhika varna. So it may happen that, a Swabhavika Brahmana is born as a Shrudra due to a sinful act. And only those are referred here as Papa Yonaya. So Acharya writes in Gita Tatpari Nirnaya. Can you mute yourself, please? Yeah. Papadi karitaschaiva pumsam swabhavika api vipratvadyaha tatra punyaha swabhavya eva muktigaha. So there is a long quotation after this. The main point is that, only those who have slipped from their Swabhavika varna are referred here as Papa Yonaya. It doesn't mean that all Shudras are Papa Yonaya or whatever it is, but people who are Swabhavika Brahmana who was born as Shudra are the ones who are referred here like that. Now, the same thing applies to Vaishyas and women and all these people also. For example, a man who indulges in too much of lust or whatever it is can be born as a woman in his next birth, but he is innately a male. So such people are also referred here. Now, so basically, see the small change in the interpretation and gives a totally different meaning. He reads Papa Yonaya as an adjective. Papa Yonaya Punya Mam Yanti. Basically, these are originally or naturally meritorious people, good people. Because of some sin, they are taken birth into a different yoni. Even those people will be uplifted by me. That's what he's reading it. Not as, all three are Papa Yonaya and, things like that. But here, right, we may think that, there is still some sense of higher lower over there, right? Why should a sin bring in a Shudra Janma? Why can't a sin bring in a Brahmana Janma? So Acharya is not saying that, Acharya does accept that a Brahmana Janma is, the result of Punya Karma. And why is that? It is because the purpose of creation, look at it, right? You go back to the original, the fundamental tenets. The purpose of creation is to enable sadhana, which is primarily Jnana, Bhakti, Vairagya. Both Bhakti and Vairagya improve as we have more and more Jnana. So anyone with higher Jnana must be of higher value. Therefore, Brahmana Janma is higher value. So I don't know, somebody is, yeah. Acharya ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ mute ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅವ್ರನ್ನ. Yeah. So eventually coming back again, a Brahmana, that also means that, a Brahmana is supposed to have more knowledge and bhakti. We often think of Brahmana only in terms of privilege, but not of the responsibility that it comes with. I will come to that thing in a little later. So for Acharya, Varna determines the type of work. It's not the other way around, like some modern apologist thing. But Varna is still a secondary factor at the end of the day. The most important factor in part of your sadhana, whichever Varna you are born, is Vaishnava. How much of can you just quickly give me a minute? I think there is some administrative. Yeah. So yeah, am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, you are audible.
So thank you. The most important thing, therefore, is Vaishnavatva. How much of Vishnu is there in whatever you do. That is the main factor. It does not change your Varna. In fact, how does Varna matter? But it definitely improves your respectability, irrespective of your Varna. So I will give some quotes now, which shows, Acharya's perspective on Varna itself. Okay. He does not totally say that Varna is not important, Brahmana is not important, but most important is Vaishnavatva. So look at what he says there, right? Brahmanadyascha kramat pujya haripriya. They become pujya if they love Hari, if they are Haripriya. Okay. But then he brings up two other interesting situations, like, what if somebody is higher in Varna but lower in Bhakti? Okay. So like Dhritarashtra is to Vidura. Dhritarashtra is higher in Varna, he is a Kshatriya, but his natural Bhakti is not as much as what Vidura's is. So Acharya says, Hari Bhaktau Anuchastu, Varnocho Nati Pujyate. Okay, you respect him, but don't go too gaga over him. That's what his main point is. And on the other hand, Nati Pujyate, I mean, don't respect him too much, little bit is okay. But what if one person is higher in Bhakti but lower in Varna, like that's the other way around, right? Vidura to Dhritarashtra. Acharya says, Vina pranamam pujyastu varnahino haripriyaha. So very clear, right? I mean, you don't need to do Sashtanga pranama or anything like that, but he should be respected. He should be respected greatly because he is a Haribhakta. So, I mean, this is not any surprise to most of us. Even in Prahlada Charitra, it comes. Prahlada tells that more important than a person who has all the Shamadama, etc., but doesn't have Vaishnavatva is like no use. But Shvapaka or is more important if he has Haribhakti. And this is an interesting thing which says Acharya says in his end of Mahabharata Prananya. Avaishnavakrutam karma sarvam antavaduchyate. Anantam Vaishnavakrutam tatra varnakramat param. Basically, his point is, if an Avaishnava does anything, it will have limited results. Sarvam antavaduchyate. I mean, they will give some immediate benefit, maybe. He doesn't totally say that there is no benefit at all, but it will have a limited benefit. But if a Vaishnava does that, basically, if you have Vaishnavatva when doing it, then that will lead to immense benefit. And it is in the higher the order of Varna, that thing it is better. Varna kramat param. So if a Shudra does something, okay, some task, and if a Brahmana does the same thing, of the same Vishnu Bhakti is there in both of them, then whatever a Brahmana does will give more benefit. That is why our scriptures say you should give dana to a Brahmana. And more than that, Vaishnaveshapi martyayiryat kritam shatagunam tataha gandharvakam karma. So then he says, how as and when the Vaishnavatva increases, right? The next in the ladder is basically the Gandharvas. So then, it goes to Devatas and finally Brahma. Vaishnavatvam kramodbruddham brahmantam jivarashishu phaladikyam karmanam hi Vishnu prityaiva nanyatha. So basically the same task done by a higher Varna is of same Bhakti is more fruitful. I mean, not same Bhakti. The assumption is that the Bhakti is more in a higher Varna. So we should all, try to get that higher Bhakti to prove that we are eligible to be in Brahmana Varna at the end of the day. But I will also show Acharya's other words, to show his perspective on this whole thing, right? Sattvadhika pulkasopi yastu bhagavata sada. This comes in Gita Tatparya Nirnaya. It's so nice. He says pulkaso is basically one of the lowest varnas or whatever it is, right? Even he, if he is a Bhagavata, you should say that his original nature is that of increase of lot of sattva is there in his nature. So look, for him, what matters is Varna is secondary. Main thing is Vaishnavatva. This again, he shows up when he talks about, this Gita shloka is there. Yavan artha udapane sarvata samplutodake. Tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. So see, it is very easy to interpret Brahmana here as, with respect to the word kind of thing. But Acharya says, no, this Brahmana is not the Varna here. This is one who, who Brahma, Anatiti Brahmana. It is basically one who has Parabrahma with him, who breathes and respires Brahma, Parabrahma, who carries with him is Brahmana here. Then I will give some more quotes which show how he thinks. And Shudrasyapi, this is very important. So in Bhagavata, one place, where it comes that, where it appears that, the first three Varnas are asked to be little mindful of what they eat, and they should ensure that they don't have any fall. They should not fall. Basically, they should not have any patana. And it appears as if, the Shudra is said to be, he can do anything because he is already, kind of sleeping, and a sleeping guy cannot fall any further, right? I mean, he's already lying down. Now, Acharya says, no, that is also not right. Shudrasyapi harer diksham pravishtasya tu vipravat abhakshadi kruto doshaha sahi shudro hi mukhyatah. Even for a Shudra, if he has taken Hari Diksha, he is like a Brahmana. He should not eat onion, garlic. There are abhaksha bhujya. Basically, he should not eat any of those things. And if he does that, he is also going to be troubled by dosha. So this he quotes Vishnu Santras to say this thing. And this one, there are some more quotes on this. Antyajapi bhakta namajnanadhikarina. So this is very well known quote from Vyoma Samhita, which says that even people who are not within this system, Antyaja, Mlechas also, they also should be devotees of Hari by chanting Harinama, and they have and Nama Jnanadhikarana. It is not just Nama; they also have eligibility to know knowledge, to gain knowledge, and so thus in our system, right? According to Acharya, everybody has adhikara to get knowledge in general. In fact, if one is born as a Brahmana, he should ensure that this opportunity doesn't slip away. Okay, Tatra Mahati Vinashtihi. He says this in Kenopanishad Bhashya. It comes there. So everybody has adhikara to knowledge. Everybody should do upasana, and therefore everybody has the right to moksha. So this is basically the best form of society that you would want. An equal opportunity and equal outcome. Both are there. You may say, no, but Shudra is not allowed to read the Veda. That is not equal opportunity. I will say a non-adhikari reading Veda is not an opportunity at all in the first place. It depends on, see, our goal is Vishnu Priti. The question is whether that Vishnu Priti is obtained or not. So if a non-adhikari reads Veda, if it does not lead to Vishnu Priti, how can you consider that an opportunity? So for me, Acharya is the greatest social reformer. He gave purpose to entire society. Okay, and I mean other reformers, you may call Raja Ram Mohan Roy, any of them, right? They have done good things. Okay, but it's all to provide some immediate comfort here and things like that. None of them worry about what will help in Paralaukika sadhana. Only Acharya does that, and therefore my point is that based on his insistence on Vishnu Diksha, he is a social reformer. I'll go to some other points there. He basically even says that Vishnu Diksha, your Varna, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Te nara pashavo loke, kim tesham jivane phalam, yairna labdha harer diksha narchito va janardanam. He says these humans are like animals. What is the use in their living if they do not have Hari Diksha? And if they do not worship Janardana? Of course, Hari Diksha is of both types. Antar Diksha and Bahya Diksha both are needed. And so his essence, if you ask me to, as from a social perspective, is focus on bringing in Vaishnavatva. That is the most important thing out there. Everything else will, sort out after that. There are a couple of other somewhat disjoint points. I would still go over them because I find them unique to Acharya's thinking. So one is, competition, right? A society should we be ambitious or should we be complacent? Now, many people think that, Indians have generally been very complacent and things like that. But look at what Acharya says that, okay. I mean, I think this is a great social angle there. He says that competition amongst equals is fine, especially in terms of doing sadhana. So when, in the Bhagavata, Nirmatsaranam Satam is there, he says Matsarya, which is basically envy or jealousy, whatever you call that, it is to be discarded, with respect to people who are much higher in jnana. But for a person who wants jnana, it is okay to have it with your equals. So it is okay, for example, two students to compete to gain more knowledge. For two sadhakas to say, I will do more tapas, or I will do this Ekadashi thing in a much better way. So Acharya is the only one who conceived that, people should compete and they should basically have a little ambition towards doing more and more sadhana. I don't think anybody else even thought of that. This is one second point. Thirdly, this is more famously, this is quite popular. He does say that, social service cannot be avoided. It is like a tax. Nana janasya susrusha karmakhya karavan mite. Kara is basically tax. So it should be done, and you should engage in, doing service to many people. But this should be done by people who wish to yogarthina to sakarya. Okay. So this should be done by people who wish to see Lord and to wish to be with him. And for a person who has already gone there, even he's not exempt from it, he should do it with his superiors, and others should do it for everybody else. So that's social service. I mean, what constitutes this Sushusha is a bigger thing, but it is necessary here according to our Sriman Madhacharya. Then finally, I want to say one important thing here, which is that of, this comes again in multiple places, but predominantly in the Gita 6th chapter. He basically says, Vittam bandhur vayah karma vidya chaivatu panchami etani manyasthanani gariyohi yad uttaram. So his point is that, I mean, this is basically told as, let's say there are two people who are in front of you, So who will you do your respects? Who will you pay your respects first? So there are 5 factors: vittam, bandhu, vayaha, karma, vidya, chaivata panchami. Basically, it is money, or basically prosperity, or whoever is capable of spending more and influencing. Bandhu, if a guy who is wealthy is there, and but a person who is related to you is there, then that person. If both are bandhus, then the person whoever is elder, he needs to be given. If both are equally elders, and then whoever has done more karma, more anusthana, that person needs to be worshipped. And finally is vidya. There's nothing more than that. So this is how you should manyasthanani. Basically, these are the factors for respect. These determine who should be respected more. So the crucial aspect here is vidya, which is jnana, is the highest factor over there. So according to this is there in Manusmriti and other places also. The fact that Acharya has quoted this, he basically envisages a society wherein vidya is the highest factor, highest factor for respect. Unfortunately, in today's world, we have other role models. If you ask, people have sports people, or actors, and music bands. They have these people as role models. But according to the society, for a society to grow and for a society to have purpose, vidya is the biggest thing. So if you have a person who is a pandit and who is very close to Vishnu, give him more respect than anybody else. That's what matters. And if we should nurture this kind of society, is what I would say. Finally, before ending, I would like to have one last point. Basically, Acharya, when he talks about different karmas and what should a brahmana do, what should the different sections of the society do, in his Mahabharata Tatparya, he tells this very important thing: Swakarma viprasya japopadeshau Vishnor mukhad viprajati pravritta mukhotyatam karma tenasya sodat. So basically, he has some sort of mapping between the organ or the place from where different classes were born. Basically, the Abhimani Devatas of these classes were born, and the type of work that needs to be done there. So the main karma is that of japa and upadesha. Basically, japa means it includes, adhyayana, studying, meditation and all those things. And upadesha is also basically adhyapana, which you need to teach. So this is, I think, key for us as Brahmana. So as we see, all privilege is fine, but the responsibility is that we need to have more jnana. The focus of this entire society should be basically towards jnana. So if we follow this particular dictum, Swakarma Viprastya Japopadesha, we start our day. I mean, I've been trying to do that for quite some time now, and it helps. So I mean, I'm employed elsewhere. I do all the non-Swakarma, but still I start my days with what Acharya has said, which is to basically study something or to teach something or both. So I mean, not any other subject, but some or the other Vaishnava Shastra should be studied. So this, I believe, if we start our day with Adhyayana and Adhyapana, we will have a well-informed society, and that, I think, will be strongest. So we people keep saying that Hinduism is not prone to attacks and things like that, but that's not true. We are less informed today than what the society was earlier. So in our today's this one, we should again strengthen our jnana at an individual level, at a family level. Then the whole society will anyway become good. With that, I would like to end my thoughts on discussing my thoughts on this. Akshayam karma yasmin pare swarpitam prakshayam yanti dukkhani navatah aksharo yojara sarvadevam tatah kukshigam yasya vishvam sada jadikam prinayamo vasudevam devata mandala khandam. Adhyesha Krishnarpanastu.
Kadri Krishnacharya authoritatively, very brilliantly talked on the said subject, showed new vision to our listeners on Madhvacharya's life and works. I hope Krishnacharya will do Upanyasas on coming days in our Purna Pradnya Samshodhana Mandira. Hardika Dhanyavadaha. I congratulate all you for joining us. Tomorrow will be the last day of Madhva Saptotsava. K. Sumanacharya from Chennai, who will speak on Madhvacharya. Dhanyavada. Shri Krishnarpanamastu.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.